Incredible moment. Millionaire walks in to discover a touching secret cradled by his maid. Thomas Reed strode into the expansive mansion he called home, the echo of polished marble floors amplifying the hollow thud of his footsteps. Outside, rain lashed against the expansive windows, mirroring the storm of emotions brewing inside him. Successful businessman, worldly philanthropist, these titles were supposed to define him. Instead, they felt like shackles, binding him to a life he no longer recognized. At 48, he was a self-made millionaire, an archetype of achievement, yet every board meeting left him feeling more like a spectator than a participant in his own life. He glanced at the family photos lining the hallway, staged smiles, perfect moments, but none captured the laughter he once shared with his parents in their modest home. Abandonment nagged at his conscience, and he felt the heaviness of his choices pressing on him, a constant reminder of the pursuits that robbed him of warmth. Amid his bustling career and high-profile charity galas, Maria, his maid of over 20 years, was a flicker of familiarity. Her unwavering loyalty and simple presence filled the mansion with a semblance of home. Over the years, she had cultivated the heart of his household, yet he didn't know her story, only what she could offer him. The attic beckoned him, sheltering dust-filled memories that had become ghosts within these walls. Driven by a sudden impulse to declutter, he climbed the creaky staircase, dreading each step. What would he find? A collection of dreams lost? Upon reaching the attic, his eyes caught a dusty box tucked away in a corner. Curiosity overcame reluctance as he reached for it. The lid creaked open, releasing the scent of nostalgia. Inside lay notes from his parents, full of hope and love, their dreams for him splashed across the faded pages. A sudden wave of remorse crashed over him. How far had he drifted from those innocent aspirations? Maria's laughter echoed in his mind, a stark contrast to the empty halls of his mansion. He felt a pull, an urge to bridge the chasm he had created. Yet the weight of his guilt filled the room with an unbearable tension. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As he sifted through the relics, a sickening realization crashed down. Maria was more than an employee, her life had been a sacrifice to his success. In their heartfelt conversations, she had often confided in him, but he had never truly listened. Her dreams, buried beneath his relentless ambition, screamed for acknowledgement. Was he the self-made man he thought he was, or merely a destructive force in someone else's life? Suddenly, the fragile facade of his life began to shatter. An unsettling revelation lingered, a brewing injustice threatening not just Maria's future but also the community they belonged to. As tension escalated within him, he clenched the notes he held, standing at the intersection of wealth and morality. Could he confront the echoes of his past? The future loomed ominous and uncertain, filled with the haunting vision of a redemption that appeared increasingly unattainable. Would he risk it all to confront the choices that had led him here, or would he silently retreat into the shadows of his life? The question hung before him like the rain outside, a reminder that inside the confines of his opulence, he had never felt more alone. Thomas pulled himself back from the edge of nostalgia and self-loathing, acutely aware of the crumpled notes in his hands. He had to face the uncomfortable truth that Maria had become a symbol of his negligence. Her laughter, once a comfort, now echoed through hollow spaces in his heart, exposing fissures in the life he meticulously crafted. How had he allowed himself to drift so far from the morals instilled in him by his parents? He clenched the letters tighter, a wave of resolve washing over him as he recognized he stood at a pivotal moment. The rain continued to pour outside, each raindrop resonating within the cavernous attic like a metronome, ticking away at his indecision. He needed to transform this frenetic energy into action. He thought of Maria, tirelessly working in the background, ensuring that life outside these walls seemed effortless. If there was one thing that became clearer in that moment, it was that he could no longer ignore her presence or her struggles. Descending the attic stairs, each step felt like an awakening. He had let ambition overshadow his humanity. What if he could make a genuine effort? Taking action required vulnerability, and that terrified him. It was time he learned about Maria's aspirations, to listen, to understand the depths of a life intertwined with his own. Thomas wasn't merely a boss, he had been cast as a distant ruler in his own kingdom, disregarding the loyal subjects that held it together. Back in the warm embrace of the living room, he found Maria poring over laundry, the rhythmic sound of fabric rustling mingling with the storm's lull. She glanced up as he entered, surprised by the unusual expression on his face. He saw the flicker of curiosity in her eyes, a hopeful gap in the decades-long silence that had suffocated their exchange. "Maria," he began, his voice steady yet low, "can we talk?" Her brow furrowed slightly, measuring his intention, before she nodded, placing the laundry basket aside. They sat at the kitchen table, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the mansion surrounding them. It felt more intimate, grounded. The warmth of shared meals and daily life breathed life into the conversation he was about to initiate. "Over the years, I've taken your contributions for granted," he admitted, searching for the right words. "I know I've never truly asked about your life, your dreams. I've been so caught up in my world, I didn't see yours." Silence hung momentarily, charged with anticipation. Maria's eyes softened, he witnessed years of suppressed emotion flickering to the surface. "I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Reed. You've always given me a job and treated me well, but that's just it. I'm more than a maid." Her honesty struck him. How many times had he been so absorbed in his empire that he hadn't acknowledged the people who sustained it? The world outside the mansion was changing, and he felt the pressure to adapt. She deserved not just recognition but support. He thought of her dreams, previously shrouded in shadows. It was time to bring them to light. "Tell me about them," he urged, bracing himself for what lay ahead. He felt both hope and dread settle inside him. "I want to write. Share stories, the kind I can't tell here," Maria confessed, her voice tinged with an unexpected strength. That revelation struck him. Her voice was a reflection of the unvoiced dreams of countless others, the vulnerabilities tucked away in forgotten corners of his life. The heaviness in him began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of responsibility. The beginning of a purposeful journey had ignited within him. But with this newfound awareness surfaced yet another unsettling truth. He had neglected not only Maria's dreams but also the community his wealth had long overlooked. "You should write," he said, a flame of determination blooming inside him. "And I want to help you." The storm outside finally began to wane, yet a tempest of challenges loomed on the horizon: fears of vulnerability, regrets buried in his success, and the awakening call to uplift those he had inadvertently pushed aside. Would he be willing to confront not only Maria's dreams but also the shadows of his own conscience? The moment of truth awaited him, and the journey would not be without its trials. The stakes had grown higher. Now, he stood on the precipice of monumental change. Would he embrace this new chapter, or retreat into the safety of his previous life? Thomas sat at the kitchen table, the weight of his newfound commitment heavy in the air. The surreal turn of events spiraled in his mind, illuminating the shadows of missed opportunities. He had lived a life dictated by structure and ambition, confident in his clear-cut goals, yet here he was, navigating uncharted waters. It felt as if, in encouraging Maria to pursue her dream, he was simultaneously unearthing the remnants of his own buried aspirations. What about the ambitions he had cast aside in the name of success? Questions swirled as he looked across the table at Maria, whose face lit up with cautious hope. He knew the enormity of what he was proposing. Was he ready to bear the vulnerability intrinsic to supporting someone else's dream while unraveling his own? "Do you want to start right now?" he asked suddenly, surprising himself with the intensity of his enthusiasm. Maria's eyes widened. Right now? She echoed, unease creeping into her voice. Yes, I mean it. Why not? We can talk through your ideas, figure out the stories you want to share, he said, excitement bubbling beneath his apprehension. This was new territory for Thomas, yet the prospect of creative collaboration ignited something within him, a creative fire he hadn't felt in years. Maria hesitated. Well, I have some ideas in my mind, but I've never really shared them with anyone. That's where we begin. Trust me. Start with one story, the one closest to your heart. I'll be here to listen. Thomas leaned forward, encouraging her. With a deep breath, she conjured the courage to begin. The narrative flowed from her lips, detailing life in their small town, a tapestry woven with vibrant colors of joy, strife, and perseverance. As she spun her tale, Thomas could hear life in her voice, each word resonating with meaning. The compelling arc held him captive, making him confront not merely Maria's reality, but the very foundation upon which he had built his life: business, profits, and power, overshadowing the human experience. In that moment of revelation, he felt the gulf between their worlds begin to bridge, his heart moving away from the ruler's throne towards a shared space of creation. Hours drifted by unnoticed as their conversation deepened. Yet with every story Maria shared, Thomas wrestled with the gnawing memories of his own history, the dreams that had flickered out long ago, nuances of self-expression eclipsed by responsibility. Tell me more, he encouraged, seeking a connection that had eluded him for so long. With each story, he leaned into the rush of vulnerability that had begun to envelop him, a call to confront not just the lives surrounding him, but his very own unexamined past. Yet lurking beneath this budding collaboration was the lingering anxiety about whether he could bear the weight of another's ambitions while nurturing his own. How could he nurture a spirit with creativity while still confronting his life's harsh realities? Just as Maria paused to catch her breath, the doorbell echoed through the house, jarring them both from their cocoon of creativity. The moment crystallized tension like a storm cloud returning, a sign that their discovery could be interrupted at any moment by the demands of his business. Stay here, Thomas instructed as he stood, torn between his new purpose and the ever-looming call of his wealth. As he moved toward the door, a question crossed his mind: would they be able to reclaim this moment of connection, or was he destined to retreat once more into the safety of his institutional world? The doorknob felt heavy in his grip as he hesitated, the threshold a harbinger of yet another decision. What awaited him beyond that door? Expectations, challenges, or an opportunity to further explore the transformative bond growing between them? As he opened it slowly, he steeled himself for whatever might lie ahead. Would stepping through this door lead him back to the demands of his empire, or propel him into the intricate web of dreams intertwining with his own? As Thomas opened the door, a gust of cool air swept in, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of urgency. There stood his business partner, Jonathan, with an expression that suggested a storm was brewing. The sharp urgency in Jonathan's eyes cut through the creative afterglow that had enveloped Thomas, pulling him back into the unforgiving grind of corporate life. "Thomas, we need to talk," Jonathan said, brushing past him and striding into the kitchen without waiting for an invitation. He paused, taking a quick inventory of the atmosphere before his gaze landed on Maria, still seated at the table, her enthusiasm now muted. "What is going on?" Thomas asked, his heart panging with a mix of dread and annoyance. He had just begun to explore the depths of creativity that Maria had sparked within him, and the last thing he wanted was to be dragged back into the world of spreadsheets and quarterly reports. "We have a big meeting in an hour with the investors, and they are not going to wait," Jonathan replied, dismissing Maria's presence with a wave of his hand. Thomas felt an uncomfortable tension in his chest. The dichotomy was palpable: on one side, Maria's stories whispered forgotten dreams of connection, and on the other, Jonathan served as a reminder of a life filled with expectations and responsibilities that left no room for aspiration. "Can't this wait?" Thomas suggested, his voice firmer than he felt. "I was in the middle of something important." Jonathan raised an eyebrow, skepticism etched on his face. "Come on, Thomas. You need to get your priorities straight. This is what you've worked for your entire life. As the words hung heavy in the air, Thomas's mind began to reel. The juxtaposition of Jonathan's callous practicality against the delicate vision Maria had begun to weave was a weight he hadn't prepared for. Was his life truly defined by profit margins and investor presentations? How had he allowed that to become his identity? A wave of rebellion surged within him, a budding determination nudging him to claim his own narrative. "You're right, I do need to prioritize," Thomas responded, feeling the shift in his own resolve crystallize. "But I'm realizing that might mean something different than what I've always believed." Jonathan's expression soured, but Thomas pressed on. "I need to take this time now. Maria is sharing something big with me, something that matters." The moment stretched, a fragile boundary between the man he was and the man he aspired to become. In his heart, he could almost feel the shift, as if a line was being drawn in the sand. Maria remained silent, her gaze flickering between the two men. In that moment, she was the embodiment of artistic dreams, a craft made tangible through her words that held the power to reshape Thomas's world. "Fine, but don't expect to find this opportunity again," Jonathan snapped before turning on his heel, frustration clear in his tone. Thomas watched Jonathan storm out, leaving a silence that seemed both liberating and terrifying. He turned to Maria, whose eyes sparkled with uncertainty. "What just happened?" she asked, her voice soft yet probing. "I think I just pushed back against a lifetime of expectations," he admitted, feeling a mix of exhilaration and fear. "But that's not enough. I need to keep this momentum going." As they resumed their conversation, a newfound urgency coursed through Thomas. He could no longer allow the fear of vulnerability to anchor him. With each story Maria shared, he felt a part of himself igniting, transforming her revelations into reflections on his own suppressed dreams. "Let us talk about your ideas again," he said, leaning closer, his voice determined yet tender. "What is that one goal you've always held on to, despite everything?" But as Maria began to open up again, a dark cloud fell over the previous sunlight. He could already feel the pressure of the corporate world pressurizing him. He knew he couldn't keep delaying with impunity. The meeting wouldn't wait forever. Would he summon the courage it took to forge a new path, or would the weight of former ambitions drag him back to the very world he sought to escape? The contrast loomed large as they skated on the edge of dreams unfurling before them. In that moment, Thomas recognized that a decision needed to be made, one that could seal his path either towards vibrant self-actualization or warrant return to captivity. Would he choose to chase this new path with Maria, or retreat into the demands of his established empire? The answer seemed poised just out of reach, hanging in the atmosphere like the promise of a storm. The weight of Thomas's indecision hung like a fog around him, suffocating yet mesmerizing. He leaned in closer to Maria, her artistic aura drawing him away from the crushing reality that Jonas represented. Every passing second was compounded by the ticking clock that mocked his hesitation. He could still feel the phantom echoes of Jonathan's words, a bitter reminder of the fortress he had built around himself, a fortress of profit and projections. "Let us start with something simple," Thomas urged, forcing his mind to focus. "What's a dream you've tucked away for later?" Maria hesitated, her brow furrowing as if deciphering a cryptic code. Her vulnerability cut cleanly through the haze of Thomas's corporate obligations. "I've always wanted to start a community art project," she finally confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "To connect people through creative expression, touch lives, and heal pain." The fervor in her voice ignited something within Thomas, a sense of camaraderie woven intricately with her dreams. "What's stopping you?" he pressed, intrigued by the rhythm of her aspirations. "I don't know. I guess fear." Maria's gaze fell to the table, the weight of her aspirations glowing dimly in the light. "What if no one cares? What if I fail?" Fear. It was a familiar refrain. Thomas felt a knot tightening in his chest. He, too, carried the burden of fear, though it manifested differently. "What if you succeeded?" he countered, his conviction solidifying with each syllable. What if you brought people together, made connections? As if awakening from a dream, Maria's eyes lifted, glimmering with a mix of hope and apprehension. It would mean everything to me. For the first time, Thomas saw her not just as an artist but as a catalyst of change, a spark that could ignite a fire if only nurtured. In that moment, Thomas recognized a kindred spirit, someone who illuminated the path toward a different version of himself. "Let me help you," he urged, leaning even closer, adrenaline surging. "Let us create a proposal, something that blends the corporate structure I know with your vision. We can show investors the impact of what you want to achieve." Maria blinked, incredulous. "You'd do that? After everything?" The urgency behind his actions crystallized. "I'm tired of waiting, Maria. I can't go back to that life as if nothing happened. Your dream, it could be my exit strategy." A flicker of excitement danced in her expression, tempered by a seriousness that pulled Thomas closer to the ground of reality. But the precarious balance of his choice weighed heavily on him. Could he cast away the security of his established empire for the raw beauty of an uncharted venture? "Think about this," he continued, a steely resolve hardening within him. "If we're going to make the leap, we can't hesitate. We'll need to face the investors head-on with your vision, and I'll have to confront Jonathan eventually. What if he tries to stop us?" Maria's voice trembled, uncertainty woven into her question. "Then we prepare together," he replied, fire igniting in his belly at the prospect of battle, a struggle not just for their dreams, but for his own freedom. "We plot every detail of this proposal. If he thinks he can dictate my life, he's wrong." The lines had been drawn, and the burgeoning confrontation with Jonathan laid thick on the horizon, wrapped in the thrilling promise of creativity and risk. The moment crackled as Thomas recognized the stakes. This was more than just a dream now, it was a bold declaration of who he was and who he aspired to become. As Maria's resolve began to mirror his own, the clock continued its relentless tick, reminding him of the limited time left before the meeting. "Let us start brainstorming right now," he suggested, urgency fueling his movements. But as they stood together at the cusp of transformation, fear clawed at the edges. Would they have what it took to command their dreams against an established system eager to stifle them? Outside, the world continued its relentless pace, oblivious to their emerging pact, as the storm on the horizon mirrored the tumult of their hearts. The moment had come for Thomas to either embrace the winds of change or stand vulnerable to the tempest he was ready to confront. Would he take a leap into the unknown alongside Maria, or would the shadows of his past extinguish the flicker of hope? The answer loomed like a cloud, pregnant with possibility. The air crackled with potential as Thomas and Maria settled into their brainstorming session. Surrounded by crumpled paper and scattered sketches, the undeniable synergy between them began to transform abstract ideas into a palpable vision. Thomas's mind raced, each stroke of creativity from Maria a reminder of the life he yearned to embrace, a life where purpose transcended profit. "Let us frame this as a revolutionary project," he suggested, tapping a pencil against the desk. "You connect with the community through art, but how about we incorporate elements of sustainability? We can showcase how creativity can produce not just beauty, but also benefits for the environment." Maria's eyes widened, enlightened by the direction he offered. "I love that. Art can foster not only expression but also awareness. It can be a medium for change." As thrilling as the momentum was, the specter of Jonathan loomed in the back of Thomas's mind like an anchor. The bitter taste of their last confrontation lingered, tainting each motivating moment they shared. In the midst of Maria's passion-fueled proposals, an unsettling thought gnawed at him: could he truly put his aspirations above a long-standing corporate obligation? He leaned back, deciding it was critical to confront his own fears head-on. "Maria, there's something I need to ask myself," he began, his voice lower, the weight of the question heavy. "What happens if we fail? What happens if our vision doesn't resonate, and it all falls apart?" Her expression shifted from enthusiasm to contemplation, and Thomas felt a tightening in his chest. You're right to consider that, she admitted, her voice steady. But we have to remember that every great endeavor carries risk. It's the essence of pursuing any dream. That's what terrifies me, he confessed, vulnerability lining his words. The corporate world shielded him from almost every consequence. Yet now, he was standing on the precipice of something completely different, something personal, unguarded. As the gravity of their endeavor settled in the lines of her face, Maria offered a gentle smile. We'll be honest about our plan with the investors. If we believe in it, they will, too. But it needs to come from the heart. If we're just looking for approval, we won't get it. In that moment, Thomas realized the crux of his conflict. He had built his empire on metrics and margins, but had neglected the very why that fueled any meaningful pursuit. He had allowed the fear of losing control to extinguish a deeper part of himself. The thought was unsettling, a direct collision with the facade that had defined him. Let us infuse every part of the proposal with our authentic selves then, he asserted, newfound determination fueling his words. We need to lead with vulnerability and conviction. Just as you create art with personal depth, we must craft this vision from our experiences, each triumph and each scar. Maria nodded, an understanding flickering in her eyes. I think that's how we'll create resonance. If it's rooted in what we genuinely believe, it won't be just another pitch. It'll be a manifesto. As they delved deeper into their plans, time slipped away, eclipsed by the urgency of their commitment. Operating beyond the confines of the corporate machine began to feel empowering instead of daunting. The ticking clock transformed from a source of anxiety into a herald of impending change. Yet, as Thomas sat amid sketches and outlines of their dreams, a shadow appeared at the door, the unmistakable silhouette of Jonathan. A cold shiver raced down his spine, awareness slicing through the warmth of creativity they were nurturing. It was time to confront the gatekeeper who held the keys to his past and future, a collision of ambition and legacy just moments away. The moment's tension escalated as Thomas locked eyes with Jonathan, a silent challenge hanging in the air. He had a choice to make: the fortress built on profit or the leap toward a life infused with purpose. Would he step forward into the light of his new road, or retreat into the shadows of a familiar prison? The question echoed within him, marinating in apprehension and anticipation as Jonathan's footsteps drew nearer, heralding a confrontation unlike any he had faced before. Jonathan stepped into the room, his presence overwhelming. The energy shifted, stifling any remnants of creativity that danced between Thomas and Maria. The air thickened with unspoken words, as Jonathan's scrutinizing gaze bore down on Thomas, a silent demand to explain the drastic shift in focus that had plagued their last conversation. Thomas, Jonathan began, his tone sharp, cutting through the tension. I thought we agreed to keep our work on track. This feels different. The way he spoke held layers of incredulity, concern, and possessiveness. Thomas could almost sense Jonathan's grasping at the edges of his control. Taking a deep breath, Thomas felt the nervous energy of hope and vulnerability intertwining. It is different, Jonathan. We are embarking on something that matters. More than just financial returns, it's about genuine impact. The weight of his words sat uncomfortably in the room, like a lone balloon in a crowded space. Jonathan chuckled, dismissively. Impact? You mean idealism? We need to remember what drives our success. Our investors won't care about lofty ideals, they care about numbers. The sarcasm dripped thickly from his lips, a reminder of the corporate world he had thrived in. A flash of anger ignited within Thomas. This was the moment he had anticipated, the clash of philosophy, of purpose against profit would unravel right before them. This isn't just about numbers anymore, Jonathan. I've spent years measuring success by metrics alone, and I'm done hiding behind that. I want more. The words, tinged with conviction, felt foreign yet exhilarating. Maria watched, her breaths shallow, her anxious energy evident. Her presence was a beacon of clarity amid the turmoil. As Jonathan stood there, processing Thomas's resolve, Thomas could feel a transformative moment brewing. He realized the weight of this confrontation extended far beyond Jonathan's disapproval. It encapsulated the fear that had paralyzed him for so long, fear of stepping away from security and stability. "You think this is a phase?" Jonathan finally retorted, visibly frustrated. "You're jeopardizing everything we've built for a fleeting idea. What happens when you fail? When your heart takes a tumble along with this so-called project?" Thomas straightened his posture, an electric surge of courage coursing through him. "I'd rather fail while pursuing something genuine than succeed while selling my soul. What you see as a risk, I see as liberation." The realization washed over him. He needed to define his own success. It was time to reclaim the parts of himself that had been buried below layers of business strategy and expectation. Face it, he had given Jonathan too much power for too long. Jonathan's face darkened, a storm brewing behind his eyes. "You'll regret this decision, Thomas. You think your actions carry no consequences, but they do." The warning curled in the air between them, unapologetic and terrifying. "Maybe it's time I face those consequences, Jonathan." The resolve in Thomas's voice surprised even him, solidifying a new rhythm in his heart, the rhythm of self-ownership and clarity. What happened next was an unmistakable shift. Thomas felt the subtle spark of hope igniting even amidst uncertainty. He had entered this moment intending to negotiate his beliefs against Jonathan's pragmatism, but now he understood the deeper layers. This was not merely about getting approval. This fight was about dismantling the foundations of his own fears and embracing an identity built on conviction. As Jonathan turned to leave, a question lingered in the air, bringing an unsettling conclusion to their exchange. "Are you prepared for what comes next?" He shot back, practically daring Thomas to answer. With every ounce of integrity he could muster, Thomas responded, "I am ready to redefine what success means both for myself and our vision." A silence hung, echoing his assertions in the still space. Yet, the tension did not fully dissipate. Within him swirled unanswered questions. Was he truly ready to navigate this road of change? As Jonathan walked out, leaving behind echoes of threats and disapproval, Thomas glanced toward Maria, whose hopeful expression suffused him with renewed vigor. Together, they were on the precipice of something vast, but would their resolve withstand the challenges ahead? He stared at the sketches sprawled across the table, vibrant lines and untold stories blending together, a tantalizing glimpse of what could be. The confrontation had only raised the stakes. Now, they needed to prove their concept with conviction to the world that measured worth in dollars and bottom lines. But lingering in the back of his mind, painful yet powerful, was the question that refused to fade. In a world shadowed by profit, could a vision of authenticity truly rise? The dawn of their journey had just lit the horizon, but the shadows of doubt were creeping back in, whispering doubts of inevitability and risk. What challenges lay just around the corner as they sought to materialize the disparities between dream and reality? Thomas sank into the chair opposite Maria, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. The room felt charged with potential, yet saturated with unresolved tension. Each sketch laid across the table promised innovation, yet a nagging doubt threatened to extinguish their spark. Jonathan's words resonated like a dark anthem in the background, a chilling reminder of the stakes. "What now?" Maria asked gently, sensing the whirlwind of thoughts spinning in Thomas's mind. Her voice was full of concern, but laced with the kind of hope that could ignite a fire in the coldest of moments. I think I need to dig deeper," Thomas replied, each word a hesitant step into the unknown. He was acutely aware of the precipice they stood upon, a place where failure loomed large, but so did the tantalizing shimmer of success born from authenticity. "What do you mean?" Maria leaned forward, a spark of intrigue lighting her eyes. "I need to connect this vision to something beyond charts and profits. If we want to resonate with people, we can't just talk numbers. We need to share the why, the emotional core of our project." As he spoke, clarity began to wash over him. It was not merely about overcoming Jonathan's skepticism, it was about kindling a genuine passion in their brand, a heartbeat that pulsed with purpose. Maria nodded, absorbing his words like sunlight. That could transform the entire approach. But how do we express that? Our investors are accustomed to a different language. And therein lay their dilemma. The corporate world spoke in sterile metrics, but humanity thrived on stories that created connection, empathy, and ultimately, allegiance. A wave of inspiration surged within Thomas as pieces began to fall into place. What if we could show our investors the impact our work has on real lives? The community we aim to reach? It takes the idea of impact from abstract to tangible. Like real testimonials? Maria's eyes brightened with possibilities. Exactly. Let us begin collecting stories, reach out to those who would benefit. We can create a narrative framework that captivates, humanizes, and justifies our endeavors. We can give them the emotional substance that complements the numbers and project's financial success rooted in societal impact. The thrill coursing through him was electric. As the words flowed, so too did a sense of ownership of this vision. There existed a glow of potential on the other side of risk, ready to be seized dearly. Are you sure you're ready? Maria's support was palpable, yet it came tinged with caution. Doubt flickered momentarily as Thomas recalled Jonathan's warnings. Let us face it together. If we're going to walk this path, we must be unwavering. The thought crystallized a new resolve deep inside him. Let us execute a plan that not only articulates our mission but embodies it. In the throes of their discussion, Thomas felt a renewing strength, an awareness that this undertaking was transformative not just for their project, but for his own identity. He was no longer the shadow molded by Jonathan's expectations, he was learning to carve a path defined by resilience and authenticity. As he began drafting a communication strategy, laying out crucial steps toward reaching out to potential advocates and beneficiaries, a sudden sense of urgency washed over him. They had to act swiftly, the initiative must resonate before doubt could creep back in. What's our timeline? He asked, his tone growing more assertive. The faster, the better. We need to gather stories, develop alliances, and then present it. Maria's voice steadied him. But do you think we can convince Jonathan to see this new vision? That's another battle to face, Thomas admitted, the weight of that reality settling heavily on his shoulders. But I believe in this direction now. It feels right. But as dawn's light spilled through the window, illuminating their vision chart, the question still lingered, was he truly prepared to confront Jonathan again? This next move felt pivotal. Then let us prepare ourselves for what comes next, Maria said, fiery determination glimmering in her eyes. We need to galvanize our resolve and ensure that we shine when he questions us again. The possibility of failure loomed, but in the face of it, a new narrative blossomed within Thomas, reshaping the fundamental fabric of who he had been. He was standing on the cusp of a profound evolution, and he could almost touch it. But as he sealed the final line of their strategical outline, another thought nagged him. A shadow of insecurity clung to the back of his mind, threatening to unravel all they were building. Could their vision withstand the scrutiny that awaited them? The air grew thick with anticipation for the storm brewing ahead. Thomas knew the next encounter with Jonathan would demand more than just courage, it would call for conviction that reverberated beyond profits and loss, a conviction highly fragile yet fiercely potent. Thomas's mind raced as he and Maria left the meeting room, their plan teetering on the edge of possibility and despair. The hallways felt suffocating, confined by invisible walls built from expectations and the looming pressure from the board. Each echo of their footsteps mirrored his mounting anxiety, an ongoing reminder of the stakes involved. Have you thought about the stories we need to share? Maria asked, her voice steady, pulling him back from his spiral of doubt. We need them to draw a clear picture of our vision. Absolutely. We need narratives that connect emotionally, he replied, though the weakness of his tone betrayed his inner turmoil. His confidence wavered, haunted by Jonathan's dismissive remarks that lingered like shadows in his mind. As they walked, he envisioned individual stories: the entrepreneur who overcame adversity, the family transformed by their support, the community lifted from despair. Each tale could serve as a beacon, illuminating their purpose beyond spreadsheets and projections. Instead, though, the abstract nature of his thoughts was tethered by an all-consuming concern: could he truly convince the skeptics? They reached a quiet corner of the office, away from prying ears, where thrumming silence amplified his apprehensions. "What if the stories aren't impactful enough?" he said, the burden of uncertainty weighing heavy on his shoulders. "What if they don't resonate?" "Thomas, we can curate powerful narratives," Maria insisted, her intensity igniting a flicker of hope inside him. "We just have to reach out. We need to dig into our own networks and find people whose lives have changed. That's how we make it real." He took a deep breath, her unwavering conviction igniting a warmth within. This was a pivotal moment. He could sense it, not just intellectually, but as an emotional tremor coursing through him, an awakening desire to push past the confines of fear. "Okay," he said, bottling newfound determination. "Let's make a list of potential advocates." They shared a sense of urgency, and as ideas flowed, Thomas felt a spark of creativity, an essential ingredient in their recipe for success. As they mapped out a strategy to collect testimonials and stories from potential beneficiaries, a layer of anxiety was replaced with excitement. He decided to reach out to former colleagues and clients, asking them to share how his work positively impacted their lives. Each interaction, he realized, would be a restorative promise, restoring what he had thought lost behind Jonathan's critical lens. Yet with every step forward, the specter of their upcoming presentation loomed over him like a storm cloud. Was he ready to not just present these narratives but defend them? Would he face Jonathan's skepticism again, armed with only his conviction and the strength of stories? "I'll start the outreach this afternoon," Thomas said, the urgency pulsating through his veins like a rallying call. "But we need more than just stories, Maria. We need measurable impacts to back them up. Hard data to show how these narratives align with our goals." "Right," she agreed, quickly pulling out her notebook. "We'll merge the emotional with the analytical. It'll be our ace in the hole." Their synergy transformed the room's atmosphere into a visual symphony of ideas, the sketches now serving as blueprints of an unfolding narrative in which their initiative was deeply woven. Just as Thomas began to feel the pulse of conviction strengthening, another thought pierced through: if Jonathan rejected them again, after all their efforts, would he buckle under the weight of disbelief? The urgency in the air sharpened, their previous hesitations now transformed into driving motivation. Thomas was on the brink of a decision that would redefine not only their project but his journey as a leader. So, they pressed forth, ready to uncover the potential of real lives entwined with their vision, cradling the dreams of change like fragile artifacts they needed to preserve. Yet, the hour for confrontation loomed on the horizon, and as he prepared to cross that threshold, once more, one unsettling question intertwined with determination: would he rise to the occasion or crumble under scrutiny? Just as he reached for his laptop to begin crafting outreach emails, Maria's phone buzzed sharply, a message lighting up the screen. Thomas met her eyes, curiosity mixed with apprehension. What surprise lay in wait now that could further alter the trajectory of their ambitions? As Maria glanced at her phone, a mixture of surprise and trepidation crossed her face. "It's from Jonathan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He wants to meet us in 15 minutes. The urgency of the request sent Thomas's heart racing. This was at the moment of truth where their newfound aspirations would face scrutiny under the cold light of corporate reality. Would Jonathan be willing to entertain their dream, or would he reduce it to yet another failed proposal? "Are we ready for this?" Thomas asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. The pressure of expectation felt palpable. The very air in the office vibrated with the weight of unmade decisions. Maria met his gaze, her eyes steely. "Ready or not, we have to stand by our vision. We can't let him diminish what we're building. If anything, this is the time to showcase how our project transcends mere metrics. It's about human impact." He took a deep breath, the resolve from their brainstorming session filling him with newfound confidence. Let us remember this isn't just about us. It's about every person whose story we represent. They gathered their materials, the sketches and outlines representing their vision fluttering between them like banners of resilience. Each document bore witness to the shift marked by their collaboration, from isolation to community, from ambition to purpose. As they entered the meeting room, Jonathan was already seated, the air heavy with tension. He glanced at them with skepticism etched across his brow, his posture rigid, poised for battle. "Thomas, Maria, thank you for coming on such short notice," Jonathan began, his tone clipped. "I understand there have been some changes to your approach. I want to hear it fully." With a nod, Thomas took a deep breath and launched into their vision. "We are developing a community-driven art project that harnesses creativity as a means for social change. It goes beyond profit margins. This is about creating genuine connections that uplift the lives of those we touch." As he spoke, Thomas could feel gaps in Jonathan's armor gradually begin to falter. "We envision a way to showcase real stories, testimonials from people who will benefit from this initiative. Together, we can outline our goals along with measurable outcomes." Maria interjected with enthusiasm, her passion palpable. "Our intention is to construct a narrative framework that resonates emotionally, pairing the human story with tangible community impact measures data-driven by real change." Jonathan remained quiet, his expression unreadable, which only heightened Thomas's anxiety. "This isn't just an idea I've clung onto," Thomas pressed on, determination igniting his voice. "It's a path to redefine our mission. A movement to embrace the heart of our community and ignite conversations about change." Finally, Jonathan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and considered their words. "It's an ambitious vision," he admitted, though his voice retained an edge of hesitance. "But can you truly guarantee that this will resonate with our investors? They don't care about stories unless they see a financial return." Thomas met Jonathan's gaze, a newfound clarity flooding his mind. "What if I told you their hearts care more than you think? People remember feelings over figures. This isn't just an initiative, it becomes a philosophy, a statement about who we choose to be as leaders." Jonathan's shoulders relaxed, a flicker of interest now evident. "What do you propose as evidence, then?" "You'll need something more concrete than aspirations." In that moment of unexpected vulnerability, Thomas realized he already had what Jonathan sought. "I will gather live testimonials, create video documentation, and leverage social media presence that aligns with our core message. It's about painting a holistic picture that showcases human connection and the change that follows." Maria added, "We're ready to reach out to the community and present the transformations this initiative can facilitate. Together, we can ensure investors understand the weight of investing in a vision that matters." The tension in the room began to shift. Could it be? The seeds of transformation had taken root, reaching through the concrete facade Jonathan had built around himself. "Fine," Jonathan replied, his voice softened, albeit still cautious. "Let us see where this leads. But I need to stress this will require every ounce of sincerity you have. If we promise change, it must be real." As the wave of relief crashed over Thomas, a sense of gratitude filled the space. Here was an opportunity to redefine success, not just within the walls of their partnership, but for the lives that would be touched along the way. As the meeting adjourned, Thomas turned to Maria, feeling a profound wave of certainty sweep over him. "We did it," he exclaimed, disbelief lacing his tone. "We're moving forward with our vision." "Yes, we are," she replied, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "The stories we're about to tell matter more than we can imagine." With every step they took out of the office, Thomas felt layers of self-doubt dissolving. They were no longer just a corporation chasing profits, they were now nurturers of change, architects of a vision intertwined with compassion and purpose. In that moment, Thomas recognized his own personal evolution. He had stepped down from the throne of self-interest, aligning himself instead with the hearts of those he sought to uplift. The tide of transformation surged within him, elevated by a simple truth: true wealth is not measured by the balance sheets of the world, but by the lives one touches through empathy and action. The future stretched before him, rich with possibilities. With Maria by his side, they were ready to share stories of hope, truth, and change, ensuring that their vision did not remain a mere aspiration, but a reality they would breathe life into. The journey awaited, and he knew he was ready to face it with solid confidence, recognized competence, and an established position that transcended his past. The dawn of a new era had broken, and as the first light flooded his perspective, Thomas stepped forward with determination, ready to conquer the world anew. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment their reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. True fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.